Good evening. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Veiled Mysteries. Welcome to the third part of the Idaho 4 murders and the season finale of Veiled Mysteries. Thank you as always for subscribing down below and making sure to hit the bell notification every time we are live. Technical issue here. Excellent. Excellent.
Due to the heinous nature of the crime discussed in this episode, this program may not be suitable for all audiences. This episode will include graphic descriptions of murder, crime scene photography, and sound bites some viewers may find uncomfortable. Viewer discretion is advised.
The home of the University of Idaho has been shaken up by the deaths of 4 students.
4 college students found dead. The photo they took together just hours before they died.
In the small university town of Moscow, Idaho, a massacre of 4 college students in the middle of the night so horrific, the coroner is still processing what she saw.
You've got a front door that enters onto the basement floor.
48 hours after the middle of the night stabbing deaths at 1122 King Road, Brian Koberger was on Amazon shopping for a K-bar knife and sheath.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with Taylor Edwards live in studio. Thank you for bearing with us while we have our technical issue to start out the show. But today we are going to be talking about the conspiracy around the Idaho 4 murders. I know this is a very anticipated episode. I'm really excited to get into it. I'm also really excited to see you once my camera issue gets fixed. But I'm going to toss it over to Taylor while I try and configure this real quick. But Taylor, what do we got today?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining in today. As Brandon said, we're doing our conspiracy theories. Very excited. I know I've said this in the past few episodes, but Brandon and I really bonded over this case. I think it was what really solidified our friendship. We have debated constantly. We've gone back and forth over who has done what and who we believe is involved. So just to catch anyone up who isn't aware, or as a refresher, on November 13th of 2022, there were 4 students at the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho, that were murdered brutally in the middle of the night. There were 2 surviving roommates, Dylan and Bethany, but Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan all were murdered brutally. So that was the first episode. We kind of talked about the layout of the house. We talked about each of the victims and their injuries, and of course, everything that went on the back end. So then, of course, the second episode last week was all about Brian Koberger, the perpetrator. So that was who the police ended up getting. They arrested him. And so our last episode was all about Brian Koberger, and we talked about how he was caught and what exactly the police used in order to catch him. So I do want to make a quick disclaimer. Of course, these are just our theories. None of this is true. These are all based on anything we talk about and anyone that calls in. These are just theories. Again, nothing is true. There is no official reporting except for a police document that I may refer to later. And anything else that is solidified, we will be sure to tell you where we found it and that it is solidified information. So that is all I have for today. Brandon, how are we looking over there?
We're struggle bossing.
All right. So another thing I want to mention is, as we are going through this, the main focus to remember is that there were 4 victims, and those victims do have families. So if anyone does call in tonight, which we hope that you do, please try to be respectful of the victims and their families. Not that I think this will get to their platforms, but you never know. So I just think that's kind of important to keep in the back of everyone's mind, is that there were victims, and it is a very tragic murder that did take place. So I guess Brandon is Still struggling over
Yeah,
there.
we're having a hard time here.
Working on his
This is so
camera.
embarrassing.
So I will cut to, let me take a look. So we wrote down some of the most popular conspiracies that we're gonna hopefully talk about all of them. We will probably get stuck on one or two of the conspiracies, and of course, if anyone joins in either through the chat, I have my text messages up, so if you don't know how to use that or you just want to text, I have that up as well. And then we also have some call-ins, hopefully, but we do have some of the main conspiracies that I have been able to find, so hopefully we're able to talk through at least some of those. But again, I know for sure I will get stuck on at least one important fact because it triggers me, it makes me upset. So some of the conspiracies that we will go through is that Bryan Kohberger did not act alone, that he had accomplices. We will also hopefully talk about the police maybe allegedly arresting the wrong person. The roommates know more. Again, we talked about how there was a 7.5-hour delay between whenever Dylan, one of the surviving roommates, heard the noises and came face to face with who she claims is Bryan Kohberger, and whenever they made the 911 call. There's also some interesting information and pictures we'll hopefully bring up of a Facebook account under the name Papa Roger. We'll kind of talk more about that, but that is an interesting caveat that isn't talked about, I think, enough, but it is kind of crazy how that ties in. We're also going to talk about how one victim was the actual target and why multiple people were killed. And then, was there possibly a police cover-up with everything? So we're going to look into all of that. We're also going to talk about evidence and some inconsistencies there. So I believe he's still working on his camera.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk. I don't know if we're going to have a camera for me. We're really going through it right now.
All right, so.
But I will interject here while I'm kind of going through this as well.
Perfect. Is there a particular conspiracy you want to start with, Brandon?
I want to dive into the multi-perpetrator theory. I think there's some really interesting lore we can kind of get into with that.
So this, I think, is our main theory. And at first, I was completely, Bryan Kohberger did it. He's the person that should have been arrested. He is the murderer. I have since changed my tune, and I think I've almost got Brandon completely on board.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is a big feat. So, multiple person theory. Personally, there we go. I personally think that Bryan Kohberger was involved. I do not think he was completely innocent. However, I think I am fully on board with, I do not believe he did the actual stabbing and the actual murders. I think it may have been someone else. I do think one of the roommates, Dylan in particular, was involved. And I think there may have been a third person that connects the two of them together. I am now frozen, Brandon. Technical difficulties. So sorry. 1 second. everyone. So sorry about that. If you could bear with us, give us a few moments. We're going to try to fix Brandon's camera and make sure that mine goes okay and doesn't glitch.
I might have my camera back.
So bear with us just a few moments. Think about your conspiracies. Get ready to let us know what they are and join in on our conversation. We want this episode to be very conversational based. So bear with us. We will be right back.
I might have my camera.
Oh, okay. Just kidding.
We're working on it.
We may be ready.
This is the messiest podcast. Thank you so much for bearing with us. This is crazy. We have our technical issues, but we do not have technical issues like this, so it's a little embarrassing.
So I'll just jump right back into my multi-person theory. So if we go with that theory, I will start with Brian Koberger, how I think he was involved, because again, I do not think he's completely clean in this. I think he may have been like the getaway driver. We know this is from evidence and through testimonies and through police interviews, we do know that he purchased the K-bar knife on Amazon. We do have that purchase that is completely confirmed. So I think he possibly purchased the knife. I think he also probably came up with the plan. Again, we talked about this last episode, but Brian Koberger studied criminology. He was getting his PhD. He also he posted a Reddit thread before this happened, asking about individuals who are inmates or were inmates and what their crimes were and what their experience was like. So I do believe he probably came up with this plan. He purchased the knife and was possibly the driver. Do you think he was involved in anything else?
Now that I'm on your conspiracy side of the multi-perp, I think he definitely was involved. I don't know if he necessarily did it based on the fact that he is so particular about things. And I think that's with being on the spectrum, with his, it's almost like an obsessive compulsive. I mean, we looked at his apartment that was released, that there was nothing there. It was like either someone was moving in or just moved in or is moving in the process of moving out. So I think the idea of him doing it also in that time span and potentially not even knowing the house, I think that definitely leads to him just kind of being involved rather than actually committing the crime.
Also taking a note, him being on the spectrum and a few of his other mental disorders is confirmed. That is in police reports, court documents. There is actually a court document where they try to go around the death penalty using his autism as a defense. That was denied. So we do know that is confirmed. Now, let's talk about Dylan, the surviving roommate. She came face to face with him. So she opened her door a total of 3 times. On the 3rd time she opened her bedroom door, allegedly, Brian Koberger was standing face to face with her. And looked at her. They stood there for about 30-ish seconds, and then he left. He just walked out the sliding glass door. So that's kind of odd, considering that we talked about this last time. He had killed Ethan, who was sleeping, not even awake, did not even witness Xana being murdered, never woke up. He was a victim and he was killed simply for being in the vicinity and being in the room. But whenever Brian Koberger came face to face to one of the roommates who completely just froze and stood there, he just walked out. He just left. So that is very odd to me. That does not make much sense. So I think the way she was involved was she possibly gave the information of when everyone was home, because she was home first. I believe that is in her 2nd police interview on November 17th, 4 days later, after the murder. She was home first, and she notates in there when everyone got home and when she went to bed first. So she went to her room first. No one knows what happened in there. She does not say much. So I believe that she was the one that gave the information of when everyone was home and probably when everyone was sleeping to let them know when it was okay to come into the house. And then I also believe She helped give the information about who was in the house, or I'm sorry, where their rooms were. So where they were in terms of the house, where their bedrooms were. So that way they knew where to go, because we have showed the layout, but it was a very odd shaped home. So the third person, you're probably wondering, so then who committed the crime? I think this was a third individual. Not sure who it could be. I think probably connected to both Brian Koberger and Dylan. If Dylan is not involved, which I don't know how that would be a possibility, but I think that the mystery person had probably been in the house at some point. That was a big party house. There were a lot of pregame parties there. So I think that person has probably been inside the house before or knew Dylan well enough to talk to her that night so that they knew when everyone was home. And then let's also remember there was a 7.5-hour delay between Dylan hearing everything going on and coming face to face with allegedly Brian Koberger and calling 911. So another big red flag for me. Brandon, what do you got?
I think here's my thing. Let's go with the fact that let's go with Brian Koberger doing the crime.
Okay.
He's, from what we know, he's never been in the house.
Correct.
So for that crime to take place in such a short amount of time,
it was 4 minutes and some seconds, I believe.
Yeah. So for that crime to happen in that short amount of time, someone needs to know the house, because that's not an easy house to navigate, as we talked about in part one. So I think, do you think that Brian Koberger was ever in the house at all, ever, like as going to a party?
No.
Because he has no relation to the girls at all.
He has no relation. He has no relation to the University of Idaho. He went to school at the University of Washington in Pullman, Washington, which was only about a 15 to 20-minute drive away. But no, I don't think he was in the house. I don't think he is the type to party or get invited to parties.
Right.
He did not like women. That is another thing to note, is he did not like women. He was a, what is the word?
Incel.
He was an incel. So he never got really recognized or acknowledged by women. So he got to the point in his life where he despised them and wanted nothing to do with them.
While we're starting to...
I do believe we have someone who wants to call in.
Oh, good.
Or tried to call in.
Let's see.
Our recording was on the line.
Oh yeah, I'm working through that now. While we are going through that, as Taylor said, there we do have our line open. It's 407-801-7204. It's scrolling at the bottom of your screen. We just ask that you text your first name and your hometown, and we can go ahead and give you a call. Also, we have Chelsea had texted in and said she didn't have a question, but she's just proud of us and our podcast. So thank you, Chelsea, for that.
Chelsea.
We're glad that you're watching, and thank you for bearing with us during our technical issues.
What's your question? Let us know. Text us. Text me. Tell someone.
But now I have that line open. So if you are texting in, should work for you now.
Yeah.
I know you didn't want to get too into it, but I think we have to really delve into the
We do have to
Elantra.
talk about the car.
Because you were very passionate about the car.
I am. This car. I have never hated a Hyundai Elantra in my life. I don't even think I've been in one. I don't even know where to start. My issue with this car. So the Hyundai Elantra was seen in some Ring doorbell footage of circling King Road and the house. The house was 1122 King Road. So he was seen, the car was seen circling the house and seen speeding away. There is video of that. That is confirmed. It is not confirmed who the driver is. It is not confirmed who the car belongs to. The police stated that I don't want to say smoking gun, but I mean...
Our phone is ringing here. Let's go ahead.
We have the caller.
Our first
we'll hold on
caller.
that because I could keep going.
See here. Should Should have it coming in. There we go.
Right here. There we go.
Hello.
Hello.
Sean.
Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, so I have a question on the conspiracy for Dylan.
Okay.
This is Sean in Texas. What would her motive have been to have her roommates killed? I do think it's strange that she saw the person in the hallway and the person was already committing that many murders. Why they wouldn't kill them and why she called the police. That's weird, but what would her motive have been to want to see them executed?
So that I'm not sure. I don't necessarily have an answer for you. There's nothing in any documents. I have her second police interview up right now. There's nothing in the documents that states there was any ill will or any arguments in this court document between her and her roommates. Possibly jealousy, maybe. Maddie and Kaylee were very, very close, had been close since I believe it was the first grade. They were always together, and then Xana was always with Ethan. So I'm not sure, maybe jealousy, she felt left out, she hit her limit. I'm not sure what her motive would be, but the not calling the police as well as coming face to face with him and the next morning being on her phone just doesn't sit right with me, and it doesn't make sense to me.
I think there's something fishy with it, but
Yeah, it doesn't
being
make
involved
sense.
in murder.
Do you have
I think that
a thought on why he would come face to face with her and just walk out?
I don't know if maybe it was just a surprise factor for him, that maybe he wasn't expecting anyone to show up in the hallway, and maybe it threw him off guard, and it was either a fight or flight reaction, and I think so much had happened that maybe he just decided to flee. But my curiosity was the boy that was on the phone with the 911 call that
Hunter.
said that there were people not waking up and that they were checking on them and that they weren't waking up, and they had to have known that they were dead, that they had been stabbed. There would have had to have been blood everywhere.
Yeah, I do know that Xana was not completely in her room. She was kind of out near her bathroom. So again, yes, that doesn't make sense to call and say they stated that she was unconscious and she had been drunk the night before. So that's what they stated to the police of why she wasn't waking up, which she wasn't in her room, and she was stabbed the most times. I believe it was either 63 or 68 stab wounds on Xana, and she did fight back. So and we've seen some of the crime scene photos of there being blood in the house. Xana's room is also the room where on the outside of the house, there is actually blood dripping. You can see it dripping outside of the house. So that also doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if they were downplaying it, thinking that they would get in trouble if they stated that someone was murdered and the police would think it was them. So in their minds, it made more sense to just downplay it. But there's a lot with that roommate in particular that doesn't make sense. The waiting 7.5 hours bothers me as well. You never know. Someone could have been alive, barely breathing. still had somewhat of a pulse. And with them just telling the police that someone was intoxicated and passed out, the police know, oh, it's a morning after the last game. Everyone was out, everyone was drinking, and they may not have responded as quickly. I know that no ambulance responded with them when they came to the house. So I don't know. It's unfortunate, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. You are correct.
I just find it murder's drastic. I don't know what the connection is if the Dillon girl had ever met the killer, the accused killer.
I don't think she ever met
How
Brian
would
Koberger. That's
then
where
I don't know how she,
Go ahead.
unless she was, then somebody else would have to be tied to the person
Correct.
to be able to tell them where people are. So I'm waiting to see what the tie-in is, because I'm just curious why. What would be their motive for wanting somebody dead? That's pretty drastic.
Yeah, correct. And also murders with stabbing, that is considered like a passionate crime because it's very intimate. You have to be right up on the person, and a lot of times you lose control, and that's why there's so many stab wounds. Versus if there was just a gun, they could go through, shoot once, and keep on moving, which that would make sense for 4.5 minutes. But the amount of damage that was done, I don't think Brian Koberger is capable of that. Just knowing some of his mental disorders that we know through court records, and I don't think Dillon is capable of doing the act either. But I do think there was a third person that connected the two of them together, whether they knew it or not.
The case is similar to what Ted Bundy, the serial killer, did in the sorority house.
Yes.
Of going in and going room to room, murdering people. And so
yeah.
I find it, I just don't understand what the killer, if he did the killing and he did it on his own, what his motive was, and if it was a crime of passion, and maybe he went in and why he went room to room killing people and then left somebody's very strange. I don't know that the Dillon person was involved, but I find it very odd. Murder's horrible. In a violent murder scene, if you went in a room and saw somebody murdered, that's got to be very traumatic and tragic and gory to see blood everywhere. And why you wouldn't call 911 and say people have been stabbed and there's blood everywhere is just bizarre. Doesn't make any sense.
I will say there are some conspiracies, which this is not confirmed. I think that Brandon knows a little bit more about this one than I do, but there are some that state that Kaylee or Maddie was cheating on who they were with. So I don't know if that's would be the third person, and then maybe Dillon wasn't completely involved, but the person knew Dillon and just kind of panicked and left. But whoever it was definitely had to know the layout of the house because they went exactly where they wanted to go. Brandon, I think you know a little bit more about the cheating than I do.
Yeah, there was a theory going around that Kaylee was seeing multiple people. Obviously, she was on and off with Jack, who I think, at least online, was a person of interest for a little bit. He's kind of like the on and off boyfriend situationship that Kaylee had going on. And there was a rumor going around that Kaylee was actually seeing someone, or possibly two people in between, going back to Jack. That kind of tied in with maybe someone that might have been involved. I don't think any of those people were ever questioned from what I could find.
I'm not sure if your mic is going. We have someone on the chat saying they can't hear you.
I can hear both of you.
Oh, okay. It was just the person in the chat. Sean can hear you.
This
You're
is
good.
a mess.
You're good.
This podcast is a mess.
Keep going.
No, but apparently someone was someone possibly involved with seeing Kaylee in between seeing Jack. That kind of was the theory, that someone from that situation might have been involved. I don't know if I could get behind that. I think definitely it needs to be investigated more if Kaylee was seeing someone on the side in between seeing Jack. But none of that was confirmed, and I don't think any of those potential people that Kaylee was seeing was in between. Any of those people in between Jack and Kaylee seeing each other were ever investigated by the police.
Definitely strange, but I don't know if I'm convinced that the Dillon girl was involved, because murder's pretty harsh. I could see a crime of passion, somebody broken up with somebody, watching them see other people, and maybe tell somebody, hey, if you like her, I know what room she's in. I could see a crime of passion, somebody being upset that somebody was sleeping around on them and wanting to see harm to them. But the roommate in there, living with somebody's pretty personal, even if you don't like them. But, you know, wanting somebody dead
Yeah, it's
pretty harsh.
Yeah, I agree. I think she knows something, so maybe not involved completely, but I think that she knows something that she did not tell the police. There's something weird. I think she knows something for sure.
So it makes me think that it being a college thing, did the house have illegal drugs in the house? Is that why they didn't tell the police? Is that why they waited? It's just them waiting so long to call the police, them not describing what happened is very weird. And maybe there were drugs in the house. Maybe there was
That is another theory that circulated.
Yeah,
drugs.
that is a theory that went around for a little bit, that there was some sort of drug house situation going on. From what I could find, at least, maybe Taylor, you can attest to this as well, there was no substances found in the house. I mean, being a college house, I can't expect there being a clean house of drugs. Definitely marijuana and alcohol amongst the home. But from what we could find in the police records, there was nothing more than even that, which I don't think they found any marijuana. Do you know for sure?
No, I don't believe so.
So
were any of the people like low-level drug dealer, sold weed, sold acid, anything like that? Maybe they sold stuff and pissed somebody off, and
that would make sense for motive. There's nothing concrete that suggests that. I do think that Xana and Ethan both partook in smoking weed, but I don't think either one of them sold. But however, that's not to say that they didn't know someone who was a dealer and they went to them. But that would be a good motive. That would make sense in my mind.
I'm just trying to find the connection of why, I think you said in the last podcast that the guy had seen one of the girls, the accused killer had seen one of the girls somewhere and maybe was infatuated with her or something. Yes. But if that's not the case, why would somebody choose that house? Why did he go to that house? Why did he kill those people? It's just it's very, very odd, and I guess the thing that you'll never know is because the guy just pleaded guilty and didn't go through a trial, nobody will know why.
Correct. And Suzanne did ask in the chat She said, since he pled guilty, can anyone else be charged if evidence is found that someone else was involved, or is this case closed and done? So how that kind of works, at least to my knowledge, it could be different in Idaho, but if there is additional evidence found, he can file an appeal. How an appeal works is in an appellate court. They do not rehear the entire case. They do not call everyone. They only hear the new evidence that was found and use that. And that is the only way that the case can be overturned and him be exonerated. However, it is up to the judge whether or not they believe that the evidence is sufficient enough to reopen the case, which a lot of times they deny the appeal. So that would be the only way.
Well, but he pled guilty.
He did, yes.
But, you know, and I know that this is your last podcast on this, but, you know, it might be interesting if you maybe sent him a letter in jail asking him what his motive was and see if he might give you a reply.
Yes,
And,
we have talked about that. We have found his prison ID number. We do have his information. So that has definitely been talked about and something that we have considered.
maybe doing a follow-up, but maybe if you wrote him a letter and asked, you never know. He may not respond, but he might respond and say, this is why I did it. You know?
Yeah, I think it would definitely be interesting. I just a side note, I do have the we were kind of talking about Dylan not being involved, being involved. I have the layout of the house that we looked at a couple of weeks ago. I just find it difficult. If Dylan's not involved, she's literally directly across from Xana's room.
And right by the sliding glass door. So even if I'm just confused about not hearing anything. And I know at one point she did go down to Bethany's room. But even then, Brian Koberger, or the potential perpetrator, walking in that glass door that's literally right next to Ethan and Xana's room, kind of sharing that wall. Just very interesting.
But even if it was just luck of the draw, and that's probably not the right word to say, unluck of the draw, of him just picking doors to go through, either she was inebriated to the point to where she couldn't hear anything going on, because you would think that there had to have been a massive commotion in the rooms with that many stab wounds and somebody fighting back. And what night of the week did this happen? Did this happen on a weeknight? Did it happen on a weekend? Were they out of school? Were they, were they partying and
right, Taylor?
Totally inebriated. Maybe that's why they didn't hear them.
Taylor, this was on a Friday, right? Because it was a football game night.
Yeah, it was the last home football game of the season. And there was never a publicly released information on what Dylan's blood alcohol level was. But in her police interview, she states drinking a few White Claws, and she was playing a game called Rage Cage, which included White Claws. So she said she had maybe 2 or 3 there, which a White Claw has about, let's get an accurate number.
I want to say it's 5% or maybe a little less.
But was she underage? Was she not supposed to be drinking? Was she
20.
worried that?
So yes, she was underage.
That her parents might, not pay for her school if they knew that she was drinking.
That makes sense. However, I think in terms of what happened, that would be not even on my radar of a thought. Personally, if I had woken up and seen a brutal murder that occurred in my home and knew I had been drinking the night before and was underage, I don't think my parents would personally punish me or quit paying for school because of something happening like that.
Well, would you want your parents to know? Just throw a scenario. I was doing cocaine. I was drinking. You know what I mean? There's a difference between smoking weed and, you know, I was smoking crack and drinking and got inebriated and somebody broke in the house and killed everybody. Would you tell your parents that, or would you lie? I would lie.
I don't know. Those are good thoughts. Definitely things to keep in mind as well.
It's just one of those things. If you were, maybe you were, you know, I mean, you know what I mean? If you're having a, terrible to say, but I mean, you know what I mean? If you're having a sex orgy in your house and something got out of hand, or you're drinking, or you're doing drugs, and, you know, there's something going on that you don't want to, you need to clean up before yes, something tragic happened, but you don't want to go to jail either. I don't know. I'm just trying to think outside the box. Why would these people not call the police? Was something else happening there, you know, illegal, that they didn't want to be kicked out of school? They didn't want to be, you know, their parents freak out on them and not in their right mind.
Yeah, I think there may have been some cleanup that they did prior to calling the police. That would be one of the only explanations that I can think of in terms of that.
Well, I'll give somebody else a chance to call in, but that was just some of my thoughts and 2 cents worth I thought I'd put in. So I'll get off and let's see if anybody else wants to call in, and then I'll listen. And
sure. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, some really good points there. Definitely things to consider with considering what else could have been going on in the home. Let's pull up I'll pull up the house one more time, just so we kind of, while we're talking about it, we have reference of where everyone is at the time. When do we know? I feel like in the affidavit, maybe in Dylan's Dylan, when
Statement?
in her statement talking to the police, when did Dylan go to Bethany's room?
So let me pull up my thing from last week, because in this statement it kind of jumps, because she said that she went down to Bethany's room and then she goes back to talking about the coming face to face with the killer. So wait 1 second, let me pull up last week's notes.
In the meantime, while we're looking at that, if you would like to call in, our number is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. It is 407-801-7204. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your conspiracy theories, and kind of what you're thinking about what we're talking about, or even if you have an additional theory that you want to throw into the mix, we'd love to hear what you have to say. Again, that is 407-801-7204. Text us your hometown, or text us your first name and your hometown, and we'll go ahead and give you a call.
So there's not a specific time. However, the text messages between Dylan and Bethany about no one answering their phone and her possibly seeing someone and her phone about to die happened between 4:22 and 4:26 a.m. So my guess is probably around 4:25, 4:30 in the morning.
Okay. So this is after we've heard noises.
Correct. It's after she's come face to face with allegedly Brian Kohberger.
So at that time, she would have heard potentially what was going on next door in Xana's room.
Correct. Yes, correct.
And obviously she was in her room because we know that Kaylee and Maddie, the room that they're in the upper left quadrant of the house, that they were the first target, and Dylan would have been in her room for that.
Yes, correct.
One thing, we kind of talked about it with Sean on the phone, the toxicology reports that we had kind of come across. We had seen the victims. Do you still have those numbers, Taylor?
I can get them.
I found it interesting, the toxicology blood alcohol levels that we found for the victims. We don't know what Bethany and Dylan's blood alcohol were, but we can kind of get an idea of what kind of night everyone was having in the house. But also, because I found it interesting, did we determine that Xana was the most intoxicated?
No, it was Maddie.
Okay.
And then Xana.
Okay.
I just want to get one more piece of information up. Okay, so the legal driving limit in most states, the blood alcohol level is 0.08%. So with that, remember that, 0.08. This is confirmed evidence from their autopsies. We'll start from least intoxicated to most. Kaylee, her BAC, blood alcohol concentration, was 0.107. Ethan was 0.122. Xana was 0.229. And Maddie was 0.282. So anything 0.20% and above is considered dangerously intoxicated, possibly alcohol poisoning level.
Okay. Let me see. Okay, I have the house back up here. The food truck. I guess we can talk about that really quick. The food truck, there was a conspiracy that for a long time there was a gentleman in a sweatshirt.
He was referenced as Hoodie Guy.
Yeah, Hoodie Guy. That never went anywhere. He was questioned by police as well?
He was questioned. He was completely cleared very early on, but he did receive a lot of harassment. Do you have the video by chance? Are you able to pull it up?
Yeah, absolutely. I can pull that up.
It does look
really
suspicious, but he was cleared very early on. He was talked to by the police. I have looked at that statement. It is very bland. There's nothing really to it. He just wrong place, wrong time on a video with murder victims.
Let's see here.
It has now been more.
So while Brandon is getting that up,
Looks like I might have two here.
I'm gonna have him talk about that and kind of go through that while he does
I normally-
that. I'm going to just finish looking through Dylan's second police statement because there's a lot of information in there that I kind of want to talk about, some inconsistencies that don't really make sense.
So I have the video kind of rolling here. See if we can.
Are you able to
locate.
put it full screen?
Let's see what happens when I do that. Oh, I don't think it'll let me.
Or like where that's the only thing that they see, not our lovely faces?
No, it won't let me.
That's okay. So it is the obviously guy wearing a hoodie right there. So, Brandon, I'm going to have you kind of talk about that one a little bit, if you don't mind.
So we can see on the far edge of the screen, we see Maddie and Kaylee. Kaylee in the white top sweatshirt, and Maddie in the black jacket with the pink crop top. Let's see if we can advance this a little bit. This is them ordering. The gentleman in the sweatshirt, we kind of see hover around a little bit, but nothing super crazy. It's that gentleman with the white hood there. Doesn't really interact with them, just kind of close. It definitely looks sketchy without any context. You can kind of see he's pointing in the vicinity. My camera was wigging out on me. There we go. Just generally in the vicinity. This, for a long time, this was going around online. This was like big speculation in the beginning of the case. But nothing ever came of it. My camera's still being weird, but we're going with it. Thank you for bearing with us during our technical issues. This is ironically our season finale, and it's the worst technical episode we've had.
Yeah, that's very true. Thanks for bearing with us.
Let's see if we can go back here. But yeah, I would say generally the Grubhub video is, now knowing what we know.
And that's from earlier in the night after they left the corner club before they went home.
Right. And now knowing what we know, that video is generally irrelevant. It is scary in the sense that that's some of the last video of them alive. But in terms of the actual investigation, it is kind of irrelevant in terms of like finding the perpetrator. Again, if you have any thoughts, our number is scrolling at the bottom, 407-801-7204. Text us your first name and your hometown. We'd love to have you on about some of the theories you may have or some of the conspiracy you may have regarding this case. I guess the next thing we can kind of get into is the actual capture of Brian Kohberger and how they did that. Mm-hmm. And one thing we had talked about briefly the other day was the knife sheath and how the knife sheath was transported was a big question. And I think you had a good legal point to bring up with that as well. So when they discovered the knife sheath, it went to a lab here in Florida, and it was found, the trace DNA was found and linked to Brian Kohberger through his trash at his home in Pennsylvania. But with how the knife sheath was returned from the lab, there was no record of who had it in their possession. Normally, there's a sheet that comes along with evidence items where it's marked who had the item at what time. It was signed off by this person from the moment it is collected from the scene to when it's in the bag to when it's transported. There's a record of where it is, and there was no record attached. One thing that I had found in kind of that mill of things is that once they did receive a record, it was all in the same handwriting, all in the same type of pen. So it was either pen or Sharpie, but it was in the same writing instrument. Knowing that information, obviously Brian Kohberger and his team did not know that. They knew they had the knife sheath, but they did not know that there was no trace of how it was transported. And Taylor, you brought up a good point that might have thrown the whole thing out if they had known that.
Yeah, so typically whenever a case is getting ready to go to trial, the lawyers go back and forth and they request information that the other team has. So if the prosecution has a whole list of what the evidence is, then his attorney would then request that information and they would have to turn everything over. However, with that being said, a lot of times, especially in cases like this, they try to flood the other team with so much information that there's no way they could get through it all, or the document that they need is buried so deep within that evidence. So it is possible that whenever they requested the discovery information, that the knife sheath and the chain of custody, so that would be from the time the knife sheath was discovered in the house, the person that found it would take the knife sheath and put it into evidence and submit a report. Then from there, if it gets transferred anywhere else, it is completely sealed and it is documented each time that it is transferred to another person. And eventually it ended up in the FBI's lab to do the touch DNA analysis. So what Brandon was saying is that the chain of custody was not, there's information and there is a court document. I can't find it. It is ironically buried in the court documents of emails between some of the police chiefs, and the FBI about nobody knowing where the evidence is. It's not documented. Nobody can find it. The bag was opened at one point. And if this was presented to a judge, that knife sheath is thrown out because there's no way to tell if anyone has tampered with that evidence. And with that evidence being thrown out of the case, that was the only thing they had besides this Hyundai Elantra that connected Brian Kohberger to the case. So if that was presented as being the chain of custody not being completed correctly, then they can't present that DNA evidence in a trial. So if that were to have been known, then his public defender could have presented that to a judge and gotten that evidence thrown out. But I don't believe she knew that until after the fact. And after he had pled guilty, that was kind of the end of that. There's nowhere else to go because that discovery evidence was given to them.
Very interesting. And to think that this all could have been start finish right there at the knife sheath is pretty crazy. Do you think that would have changed the search at all? Do you think they would have found, I mean, if we're going with the theory that there were multiple people, do you think that would have led to the arrest of anyone else? Because you also kind of have the thought that once the police locked in with the DNA and locked in with the name, they just went with it.
Yes, I believe once they connected him to the Elantra and suspected that his Elantra was the one that they were looking for in the videos, I believe they got his name and that was the end of that. He was the suspect and he was the only one. There was no other DNA evidence that was submitted because his was submitted into, it is called CODIS, which CODIS stands for the Combined DNA Index System. So once someone's DNA is submitted into CODIS, if you have ever been arrested or if your DNA, fingerprints, anything is in that system, then it will pop up and tell you, hey, we have a match. This is who the DNA belongs to. However, that didn't happen. Kohberger has never been arrested. I believe the only infraction he has ever actually had was a ticket for not having his seatbelt when he was driving.
And we did find that record.
We did find that record. I told you, I dived very deep into this pool. But so his DNA was not in the system, so it didn't connect. Now, there is a testimony from the FBI agent that was in charge of doing the DNA profiles that there were other male DNA profiles that were given to her that they found in the house, but she did not submit them into CODIS because she already had Brian Kohberger's name, and if she submitted that evidence in, it would completely restart the CODIS system, and she would have lost the touch DNA evidence that she submitted already. So I do believe that once they found it and they connected it to him, that was the end of that. They only looked at him. They did not look at anyone else.
Very interesting. Do you think if the knife sheath got thrown out, do you think there would have been any other person that they could have looked at?
No. I don't think they would have found anything at all, because if the knife sheath wasn't left, they have nothing except for a white launcher with no front license plate. That's all they had, and the range changed, which is another point of contention for me.
We do have a call coming in. We'll go ahead and take
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
Hello? Hello? Oh, there we go.
Hello,
Hi.
Sean, Texas again.
Hello, Sean.
So why did he plead guilty if he had not had any other arrests? Did they ever? I mean, why would somebody just, if they didn't do it, why would they want to go to prison? Did the guy did he have things going on in his life that y'all could find where gave him no reason to live?
So this is another thing.
If you didn't do it, right.
So this is another thing that has been talked about frequently, but pleading guilty whenever you didn't do anything happens more often than not. And it's simply so that way they can get a plea deal. He knew that if this went to trial, it would be the death penalty. They were not able to take the death penalty off of the table unless he pleaded guilty. His public defender tried multiple times and submitted multiple motions to take away the death penalty on various different reasonings, but it was never taken away. So if it went to trial, immediate death penalty. If he pled guilty, it is just life in prison with no possibility of parole. So that happens more frequently than not, because if your public defender is telling you they have this evidence, this evidence, this evidence, I don't think we have a strong case, I can possibly, I can argue this point or this point, but they tell you, I don't think we have a strong enough case, you should plead guilty, they're going to plead guilty. Even if they didn't do it, simply because he did state he is scared to die. So he didn't want to die. He was scared to die, so he wanted to plead guilty, so that way he wasn't affected by the death penalty.
But y'all say that he was diagnosed as on the spectrum.
Correct.
So would it be, are you saying that his mental capabilities, maybe he didn't understand what he was doing? That are you saying his mental faculties were diminished to a point to where he didn't understand? Because I listened to y'all played the thing of him saying that he was guilty and that he committed the murders, and I would just think if you weren't even there, you know, that you would be shouting from the rooftops, I didn't do this. And you know, and then if you were found guilty, that you would appeal. But it's just very odd that the guy's demeanor sitting in the courtroom, he was very calm, very collective, you know, just admitting to killing these people, like nonchalant. And even the witness the impact statements from the family, it didn't even seem to faze him.
So
very strange watching in court.
I do actually have that motion to strike the death penalty up right now. Brandon, if you go, I'm gonna text you this link. See if you can pull it up.
Okay.
Should I email it to you? I just texted it to you.
I can pull it up that way. It's
Okay.
fine.
So the document that Brandon's going to try to pull up is the actual motion from his attorney to strike the death penalty because of his autism spectrum disorder. So it is a pretty long document, so I'll kind of just like skim through it and tell you like basically what it says. So he was recently diagnosed by a clinical neuropsychologist. And perfect, there's a document. And the defendant, Brian Koberger, contends that his autism spectrum disorder is it says, functional equivalent of an intellectual disability, which is categorically recognized as a disqualifying exemption to the death penalty. And in response, the state disputes that autism spectrum disorder is equivalent to an intellectual disability for purposes of a categorical exemption to the death penalty, and further notes that defendant has not shown a national consensus supporting such an exemption. So I believe from what this sounds like at least, because this document cites other court cases where the death penalty has been striked because of autism spectrum disorder, and she also says that she relies on the 5th, 6th, 8th, and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution, which, as a refresher, if nobody remembers middle school government, I can let you know what those are. So we said the 5th, 6th, 8th, and 14th. So the 5th Amendment is rights to due process, protection from self-incrimination, and double jeopardy. The 6th is the rights to a fast, fair public trial by jury in criminal cases. The 8th prohibits excessive bail, fines, or cruel and unusual punishments, which would be the death penalty. And then the 14th Amendment the 14th Amendment defines citizenship, guarantees equal protection under the law, and ensures due process. So that would be them saying that because he has autism spectrum disorder, he should not be sentenced to the death penalty. The court denied this motion, but it's because the state says they were not able to establish that I hate to even use the phrase enough on the spectrum, because that is why it's called a spectrum, because there are many different variables and types, but he wasn't on the spectrum enough and failed to show that it was equivalent to his intellectual disability. And so that was denied.
But was the evidence that the prosecution had, was that sealed once he pled guilty? Because you would think that if somebody had you dead to rights, they had a smoking gun of evidence against you, for them to go to you and say, we have this, we're going to convict you, we're going to go after the death penalty. You know, is there more evidence that hasn't been released?
So
maybe they threatened him with this?
All of the evidence and motions from the pre-trial have been released. They're currently, the last thing they released was on April 15th. However, that is just an order amending the order of restitution for the families, but that's not, I think there may be a few more records that are sealed, but the main things and every single motion that was filed and response to those motions have been unsealed, and it is online. You can find it all under the State of Ohio Judicial Branch website.
So when they caught him, did he initially say I didn't do it? And when they brought him in for questioning, did he deny it? That's what I'm confused about, and maybe I just missed something that was said. But when he initially went to court, they normally have you enter a plea. Did he initially plead not guilty, and then he changed his plea to guilty?
So whenever he went to court initially, he stood silent. So whenever you don't, whenever they ask, do you plead guilty or not guilty, the defender can stand up and say he's choosing to remain silent, and then the judge enters a plea of not guilty on their behalf.
So is that what happened in this case? He
Yes.
just didn't say anything?
Correct. He's stayed silent
And so,
pretty much the whole time. He's never gone on record and said anything. The only time he said anything about this or spoke at all was whenever he had to go into court and actually plead guilty as part of the plea agreement.
So when they caught him and they tried to question him, he wouldn't talk at all.
Correct. He just said that he was going to wait for his attorney, which is your right. I will say I think it's kind of interesting because the case was so big. So whenever you do a plea agreement, oftentimes part of that agreement is that the defender has to stand up and describe his crimes and what he did. When he pleads guilty, that's mainly done in cases where they aren't sure if the defendant is lying to cover it up or protecting someone else, to make sure that the facts of the case line up. So that kind of goes back to they got his name and stuck with him, and that was all. So they didn't require that of him. I also think they did that for the families, so they didn't have to relive this. I know for certain that Ethan's family wanted to not keep this going because of the pain and how bad it was together, like how bad everything was. And it had been so long. He didn't plead guilty until, let me see.
So from the time the crime happened, how much time passed before they actually captured him?
He was caught on December 20th.
The reason why I ask is you would think fighting with that many people in a house and stabbing them that you would have some type of bruising. You know, just to think about gripping a knife, you know, with a death grip on a knife and fighting and stabbing somebody. You would think there would be bruising in his hands, or, you know, fighting with somebody, there would be a scratch on him, or,
Yeah,
you know,
they
there
didn't
would
find
be
anything.
something on his body.
And I know that in the chat, Suzanne brings this up as an interest to her, but there was no blood found in the car.
Mm-hmm.
He was arrested on December 30th, so more than a month later. The crime happened again on November 22nd, and he was arrested December 30th. But there was no blood found in the car. There was no DNA, nothing. So they quite literally had nothing connecting him to the case other than Dylan's witness statement and the knife sheath. Which
you would think if somebody stabbed somebody that many times, you would have blood all over you. I wonder if he discarded his clothing somewhere.
But
It's just very odd they didn't find blood.
Just like the knife, it was never found because the K-bar knife has never been found either. All they have is the sheath.
And the sheath was found at the scene?
It was found in the bed with Maddie and Kaylee under the covers next to Maddie, which she was the first victim. And then I just want to...
That's odd that you would take a knife, a sheathed knife, into somewhere. You know, even if you were going to commit a robbery, you're going to carry the knife in a sheath and unsheath. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I would think that you would have your weapon out and ready if you were going to go in and commit a robbery, commit a rape, or or a murder. That's just weird in itself that somebody took a sheathed knife into a house.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. That's kind of what bothers me the most is they don't have anything really connecting him other than the sheath and the Elantra. But those are all good points to bring up and think about. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much for calling in.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. That was good. That was good. Good thoughts and opinions. If anyone else wants to call in, we'll probably be wrapping up shortly. But if anyone has any other final thoughts or opinions, text us your first name and hometown 407-801-7204. Taylor, did you have any final thoughts?
Yes, I have gone through the whole police report, skimmed it, but I took notes on things that I think are interesting. So this is the second police report she gave. The first one was on November 13th. I lied earlier. The crime happened on November 13th, not the 22nd. I'm not sure where that came from.
Well, 1122 is the address, so that's where it gets easy to
off.
Yeah.
So one thing I do want to bring up is, one second, we have some comments in the chat.
Let's see.
So Suzanne, my personal theory is that there were 3 people. I think Brian Koberger did not actually commit the crimes. I think Dylan, the roommate, knew something was going on, or she knows more information that she has given to the police, whether that be because she was scared or I'm not sure, but I do think she knows that. And then there was no DNA from the perpetrator on any of the victims, and there were no defensive wounds. Or there were defensive wounds on Kaylee and Xana, but no DNA from anyone else. So the second police report she gave was 4 days later. So they typically do that with victims who have witnessed a crime, is they do an initial one and then they do one a few days later. So that way everything processes and then they can kind of see if it matches up or not. I will say she has given, I believe it's 4 police statements, and all of them differ and vary. But I think this one is probably the most significant because it's the second one she gave. So the first thing to note was that her timeline may have been off because she wasn't sure if she was using Moscow time or Boise time. She's from Boise, and whenever they did this interview, they were at her parents' home in Boise. There is no time difference. They are in the same time zone. She said that there was an hour difference. There is not one. There would not be a discrepancy in the times she gave. Another thing that's really interesting is, as we know, Brian Koberger came through the sliding glass door and exited through the sliding glass door. So in her police statement, she says that she could not remember if she had locked the sliding glass door and that she was the one that normally did it every night. So kind of goes back to the theory of someone knowing her and her letting them know, like, hey, it's unlocked, you can come in the house, because she was the one that typically locked the door and she couldn't remember if she did, and then proceeded to state that it was not unusual if it was unlocked because Moscow was safe. She was also, as I said earlier, the first to go to bed. She stated that since she was younger, she has had dreams of being kidnapped. She's not sure where they came from, why she has those dreams, but they are frequent dreams that she has. And she also stated, which this is kind of wild to me, but she also stated that the night before she went to bed, they were watching Vampire Diaries. And the reason she mentions it is because in the episode they were watching, there were two men wearing black, the main characters, Stefan and Damon, and they rescued a girl, either Elena or Catherine, really doesn't matter. But they were wearing all black, so she says that's why she was confused. She also stated that she did hear Murphy barking and that he was normally not a barker. Another crazy statement she made was that she heard footsteps on the stairs after she heard screaming. So whenever she believed it was Kaylee that screamed, she said that she then heard footsteps on the stairs, and she had stated that they all wore Doc Martens. Why, if she is screaming and saying, I think someone is in the house, is she going to get out of bed and take the time to put on her Doc Martens to run down the stairs? Doc Martens, if you don't know, unless she wears a child size, they lace. The whole thing laces up. They're not easy to put on and off unless it's a child size, because that one zips on the side. So that makes not a lot of sense to me, because I don't see her having the time. If she thinks someone is in the house, that wouldn't be my fault. Well, it probably would, but that's my own personal demons. But normal people would not think, let me put on my shoes to run through the house. Another thing, so this is whenever they talk to her about seeing the suspect. She says that she denied knowing him. Her vision was blurry or fuzzy. She stated that she saw him holding an item initially perceived as a vacuum. Then she goes on to say that it looked like a cylinder, and she remembered a cop, that's in quotations, a cop talking about a bow. I assume a bow and arrow, so not quite sure why that was mentioned at all. She then stated that she thought it was possibly a firefighter because someone else, when I say someone, that's because the name is redacted, and I did not have time to go that deep into figuring out who it was. Someone had mentioned something about a firecracker, so she then thought it was a firefighter. And then she said that it was cylinder shaped and also shaped like a triangle at the bottom of the cylinder. Brandon, any clues on a triangle cylinder?
Sounds like a K-bar knife to me, but
sure does. And then she states that the suspect was about 3 feet away from her. If he was 3 feet away from her, I don't know how she could not determine what race he was, what his eye color was. All we get is bushy eyebrows.
And he doesn't necessarily have that bushy of eyebrows.
He does not, no. Do you have can we pull up a photo of him?
Yeah, let's.
Maybe not a super scary one.
He is alarming looking. Let's see what we can find here.
While he's doing that, she also states that when she was going to Bethany's room, when she was running down the stairs, she saw Xana lying in the hallway, passed out, in only her underwear. She then said that Xana was comfortable enough around the roommates, so it was not unusual that she was only wearing her underwear around the house. And when asked what the lighting situation was, she said she couldn't tell if Xana's lights were on, Xana's bathroom light was on, the party lights in their house were on, which I assume would be like twinkle lights, or she said there was like a little plug-in Scentsy, like one of those, you put like something that smells good in the top and it melts it, like a wax, that they had one of those. So she didn't know if that was what the lighting was. And then the next morning, she states that when she went out of the house and she came upstairs, she realized and saw that Xana had not moved from the night before and just assumed she was still passed out and intoxicated. And then she denied seeing Xana and the other victims. And then this lovely photo is Brian Koberger.
He is. I looked at a couple. They're all scary.
How do you not recognize those lovely eyes?
Yeah.
No thoughts. So those are kind of the inconsistencies I found in her second statement to the police that don't make sense. There's just something kind of off about it. But those are kind of my thoughts, theories. Thank you so much, Sean, for calling in twice with your questions and thoughts. They were very thought-provoking. Helped a lot.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts, Taylor, before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. I think that was a good conversational chat.
Yeah, obviously, this case, for the most part, is wrapped up. If anything ever were to change, obviously, we would do a special episode on it. But unfortunately, this is kind of all that there is. A lot of the documents and a lot of, because there was no trial, a lot of the evidence is still kind of under wraps for the most part. We did get a lot released. A lot has been released through FOIA requests. But for the most part, we most likely will never know a motive. We will never know if there's other perpetrators. And
maybe if he answers our letter.
Possibly. We can hope for that. But we'll most likely never hear from the living roommates as well. So it's kind of just sitting there, and it's going to be a mystery for a very long time, if not forever.
Yeah.
So thank you, Taylor, so much for being a part of this series. I'm looking forward to season 2 with you.
Yes, stay tuned. We have a nice little trailer for everyone. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's going to be so great. So Taylor, thank you so much for your work on this, and I look forward to season 2 with you.
Thanks.
And thank you so much for spending a little bit of your evening here with us tonight. This past season has been so incredible to put together, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you for subscribing, engaging, and tuning in to our podcast over the past several months. This whole production would not be possible without your support and viewership. Over the next few weeks, Taylor and I are going to be preparing for season 2 of Veiled Mysteries with even more crime, conspiracy, and deep dives to go down together live each Monday night. Part of what's so exciting about Veiled Mysteries is being able to bring you content real time and engaging through comments and call-ins. I look forward to what's ahead for this podcast and the stories that we bring to you and the community that we continue to build on YouTube. Outside of the realm of Veiled Mysteries, we live in a world that is becoming ever more divided, colder towards one another, and selfish. We saw in many of the crimes and accidents that we covered this season that there is a growing pandemic of hate and disdain for one another. I encourage you to lead with love and empathy, to be kind to those around you. Thank you again for allowing us into your space. Whether you watch us from home, on your TV or phone, on your way to work, in the car, or listen to us while you're getting some work done. It's always been a pleasure being a part of your Monday nights. Season 2 is just around the corner, and it's going to be more jam-packed than ever. From some of the most high-profile cases ever committed in the United States to the edges of the mysterious Everglades, the great state of Florida has seen some of the wildest crimes and conspiracies that have played out on the internet. Here's an exclusive look on what we're planning for Season 2.
The Casey Anthony defense opened her Florida trial by claiming she didn't murder her toddler, but lied about the accidental drowning because Casey had been sexually abused by her own father.
He then quickly moves to a stairwell, killing another person without even breaking stride.
Miami police are clearing up this conspiracy theory.
Well, that puts an end to my tarpon fishing.
There is new hope in the search for an Orlando woman missing for nearly 20 years now.
This monster is being called the Handsome Devil.
So, we are right outside Capitol Reef right now in a free dispersed camp spot. And we've been lucky so far at all the places we've stayed, but I'd say this is one of the best so far.
Season 2 of Veiled Mysteries will have 7 special episodes each week, concluding with a 3-part season finale. And it all begins on Monday, May 18th, 2025. We look forward to seeing you then. As always, make sure to subscribe down below and hit the bell notification in the description to be notified every time we are live. Veiled Mysteries is live every Monday, with Season 2 airing May 18th at 8 p.m. in the East, 7 p.m. in the Mid-Region, and 6 p.m. on the West. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at Veiled Mysteries Pod for updates and to stay in touch. If you have a true crime case or a conspiracy theory you'd like to see us cover, feel free to email or message me at veiledmysterytips@gmail.com. As always, ask questions, stay curious, and be informed. I'm Brendan Ward. Have a good night.